Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas,
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
and we're about talked out. Ironically, we've been talking for a while. Jackie and I both, this whole coronavirus thing, it truly is a something. It's a once in a lifetime thing, right? We've never seen anything like this, and we were talking through how it's affecting our lives and everything. And we wanted to, even the last webinar we talked a bit about it, but we want to talk a little bit more. Some of the changes, some of the basic things we're going to see. Let's just go ahead and so we got a list here to start with, at least. So the whole doc in a box type remote diagnosis thing, I think, especially because like this thing is contagious, and of course our medical care people get sick, and that's a real threat, right? So the more things they can do diagnosing remotely, wow, right? For something like a virus, something that's not, they need to physically be there and do certain things, or maybe they still have local small places you go into and they take your temperature and maybe take your blood and maybe your saliva or something, right? They do some very basic stuff. It gets sent off the lab, and then you consult with a doctor, remotely. Because honestly, we can get, someone trained in a couple of weeks probably to do blood or do simple stuff, right? And we have people with years of experience that can, they don't have to be worried about getting sick.
Yeah, and as you said yourself, doc in a box, it really does fall back on some of the stuff that we have touched on very lightly before, that right. with AI and stuff, right. Where they might be able to, these systems or whatever might be able to either screen people before they actually see a real doctor. And I'm like, on the long run, all of this automation stuff kind of falls to that thing where if we teach a system to diagnose people well enough, so that it really does it well, mm-hmm. We only need to teach the system that one time.
Right.
Where with people, we are amazingly good at learning new stuff. Right. So how many millions of people learn to drive a car each year, or walk, or do math, or it's really, really an amazing amount of people. But the hours used on teaching them that each and every day, each and every year, where if you teach a computer system how to diagnose people or how to drive a car, if you teach it well enough, you never need to teach it that again, and it only gets better.
Yeah, and let's stick with that analogy, because I think it's a really, really good point, Jackie. Is also, yeah, people learn how to drive a car and how to ride a bike and stuff, but you know what? When they're doing that, they don't. We know they don't always use their turn signals, and they don't do all the stuff they should be doing, right? And that's the same thing with doctors, right? A lot of them, they have either faulty logic, or they forget something, or they have a human bias of they feel it's this when it really isn't. And a computer can avoid all of those things, right? So there's some really great things about having enough data. And this is where my background is in data science, right? So having enough data to look at it, throw enough data at it, to pull out a model that will statistically say on average, oh, it's probably this, or ask them this next. And if it's that, then it's probably this. Much more complex than a human can ever do. And even then, even if we have the Einstein or House, let's say, from the TV show, that type of level person, what's great is we can leverage that person when it's in a program everywhere, right? It doesn't have to be just that one person.
Yeah, and to me, it might be ways off, but just that is kind of where it's moving to. And people can be against it or whatever, but and using a system like that and having a license for that, or being able to diagnose people at home or whatever, and it might fail from time to time, but then as soon as people have, just like with the coronavirus, as soon as you have a severe symptom, mm-hmm. shortness of breath, mm-hmm. fainting, or whatever it might be, then you still have emergency services. So
right.
The diagnostic of what is this rash, or why do I have this thing there, or why is my eye thickening, or a computer system could in most cases probably be used to take care of 1,000,000 cases a day of those types of things.
Right. And to follow up on your point, because I know this is where you were going with it, was at the same time, you're freeing up resources for those when you do need the actual ER person to do the other stuff, right? And that's the beautiful part of it. Yeah, absolutely. And it is it is, Jackie. I'm so glad you brought up the whole AI part of this, because it's the same exact approach with desktop automation, everything we're doing, right? Get the computers doing the logical side of things and let the humans do the other stuff that they're better at doing.
Yeah.
I saw a recent one talking about, it was a good article, but it was talking about, hey, if you're not already using like a touch pay either on your phone or with your credit card, you should be, right? Whereas things where you just wave it, you don't even let it physically touch. I shouldn't say touch, because it's, it's the, what's the near
field sensor? Yeah.
And because I worked at TI, that was one of my groups. Here, I have a couple of chips. These little chips, you can program them. They're really cool. And tell them to do certain logical things when you scan it. But near field communications, it's really cool. But what a great way to stop transmission of diseases, right? That's a wonderful thing that we should probably going to really start taking off even more so.
Yeah, and I think you'll see that in probably as many sectors as you can. And I know my local McDonald's, because I was there maybe 10 days ago, something, ordered something.
Yeah.
And they actually had a sign on the drive-through where we don't want to take cash. We take this and this and this, and they and at least here in Denmark, credit cards or mobile pay is really big, so the chance of people having none of those are really, really slim. So it's possible to kind of say, we don't want you to hand our staff anything.
And there's security reasons too, right? Which is a great thing of just the whole lack of someone can't take your credit card. It's much harder for them to steal that kind of stuff. One other thing, Jackie, why you brought this up is right now here in the States, we have a lot of, I forget what they're called, but you go in and they're touch screens and you do your ordering. You don't talk to a person and it goes in. But I'll bet you, because they're, of course, you're now touching things other people have been touching, right? And that's like, I don't want to do that. No. And we also know your own phones are pretty darn dirty, right? But at least they're your germs, generally speaking. Yeah. So I'll bet you money they'll have more things where you can download the app on your phone, put your order, and when you get there, it'll send it to them, right? And that way I'm not using the screen, I'm just using an app on my phone. I know you can do some things you can do remotely, but this is just slightly different, right? Where it's actually, you're still there in person, but you get the order on your phone.
I do believe that would be a great addition to these touch screens that you have inside the restaurants. Absolutely. Or making people able to actually order on their phone while waiting in the drive-through or whatever.
Right.
And then whatever near field, Bluetooth, whatever is needed to actually, or via web. But yeah, the idea of actually needing to be there physically and making it so easy that people have a hard time fucking it up, because hey, if you need to send it to the correct restaurant,
right,
blah, 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 blah. Yeah, just being there physically and actually being able to airdrop it or whatever you want to do with your device. Sure.
Yeah. Man, I had another thing I was going to add on to that, but I can't remember what it was now. The 3D printing devices, I read somewhere that someone's developed a ventilator that can be 3D printed. And of course, ventilators are one of the things that we are in scarce supply that's highly needed with the coronavirus. So it's just one example, but what a amazing world we're living in, right? Where suddenly everyone everywhere can have possibly critical parts that there is no actual physical transference of that unique part, right? And waiting and supply and just using your resources wisely. It's amazing.
It's that's really almost right. Where of course there's there's still some limits in complexity for what you can do, but yeah. 3D printing is going to be amazing.
I remembered what my one back on the last one was regarding the food thing, because the thing that drives me nuts is, I don't know about you, but I'll bet you, Jackie. I mean, I know you have 2 kids and your wife, right? When you guys do go out, tell me if I'm wrong in this. Do you at least 90% of the time, every time you go to, let's say, a McDonald's or whatever, you get the same thing? Right? Like, I mean, it's the same thing. I want a button. I can just say, I'm here again. We're all here. Hit the button, right?
Yeah.
Nothing changes. It's the same damn thing. Yeah. All right. Obviously, remote working, it's, I think it's going to be, it's kind of ironic because I can't remember if we discussed this on a call, Jackie, or not, but it was a couple years ago where I saw IBM, who was one of the first companies to really step forward and let people work remotely, were switching their policies and having everyone move back to working into a work environment, the office. That was about 4 years ago, I think, somewhere in there. I will bet you money, suddenly that changes again, right? Suddenly, man, keep your workforce at home as much as you can.
Yeah, and as I think we touched on also on the last webinar with the working remotely, and a lot of people being introduced to this type or level of technology might be one way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know at my company, at least, that a good amount of people who are okay with a computer, they had never really done anything with video conferencing.
Right.
All of them had heard about it.
Yeah.
All of them knew it was possible, but none of them had taken any real steps to do it.
Yeah.
They knew it. They were kind of like, yeah, probably never gonna need that. And now, 2 weeks into this, I've had calls with all types of colleagues, and it's great. But to me, it's we're so used to doing stuff like this, Joe, right? But they're like, just being on camera is a weird thing for them, right?
Yeah. Let me give you two stories with that. One was, I was watching it yesterday, and then to your point, Jackie, like, Zoom is so overloaded right now with how many new clients and people using their stuff, right? They're having actual problems, with their service. Let's just put it that way. Not terrible ones, but they're experiencing, some problems here and there, right? Whatever. But I was watching this video, and there was I'd say 15 people on the screen. And, you can see everyone's faces, and they're all talking. One person's leading the conversation. And you see one lady with her laptop, and she's like, and she's talking, and then she gets up, and she's walking with her laptop, and she walks into the bathroom, and everyone's like, and then you still see the speaker talking. She doesn't see what's going on, but she puts it down right here, facing the toilet, and then she sits, and you see her drop her drawers, and she's sitting there, and then there's this silence. Suddenly, the thing, 10 seconds later, moves, and the speaker goes, "What happened?" Apparently she missed it all. And there's the very first thing goes, this one guy just goes, "I didn't see a thing." It was really funny.
I didn't see a thing.
Yeah, but it's like you said, people who just aren't used to this technology. It's fascinating. But the other one, so one of my meetups that I go to, this landlord meetup, I have rentals, and I go to these meetups, and the vast majority of the people are I'm a young guy compared to a lot of them, right? They're older people, and I said, look, I don't think there's no way we're gonna have this meeting in person, right? If you guys want, we can use my Zoom meeting, and to host it and this and that. And anyway, so I'm working through it. But what I did, and this is something you might consider, is I went ahead and recorded a video because, with Zoom's a great tool, but it's a little confusing the first time people join, getting their microphone and speakers things set up properly. So I recorded a video showing people, here's how you set it up, right, and adjust it. And that way it was like, I was anticipating so many problems. You know, I'm like, I want to be proactively, I'm going to make the video because it comes up in our webinars too, right? Of just people don't understand, or I have a lot of calls with people around the world and they just don't, like, every time, yeah, find your microphone, look for this, change the settings. But anyway, I recorded this video to help people with it.
Yeah, and I, for my company, my section of it at least, I did the same thing with
Oh, cool.
Teams. You can find lots of introductional videos or tutorials on Teams, but still just doing it with our PC setup and where you will find it and the software shop and where you need to download it, how you log into it, how you start a small chat with people, and it's maybe 3 minutes long or something. It's nothing grand, but it's well received, it seems.
And when people know you, they're just more likely to really pay attention and feel like it's for them, it's relevant because they know the person.
And
so
it's
yeah,
in their own language, and I'm finding people they understand when I make a search for a person and it's someone they know, and yeah, it's much more relatable. Yeah.
Right. This next one here, the medical proof, it's one of those funny things. I really think this is going to come to be at some point. We're going to have advanced testing so good that you might, like, actually at hospitals right now, at some hospitals, they don't even let you in the hospital until they take your temperature outside and want to screen you, right? And honestly, I think it's going to be something like that at your work, that you, because it's so risky to get people sick, and once technology makes it so accurate and easy and cheap, why not have it, you put your thumb on it and it takes your temperature, maybe draws a little tiny bit of blood, and within 30 seconds they give you a green light or a you better go home, not come into the office kind of thing.
Yeah, I do believe that we'll probably have stuff like that, and it's probably a bit into the future, but I can't remember the name of the movie. Was it Gattaca or something like that?
Gattaca.
Gattaca. Okay.
Great, amazing movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot of years since I actually watched it, but I do remember parts of the premise.
Yep.
But yeah, there was a good amount of testing done to people in that.
Right.
And I'm not seeing it as being as dark as you could see that movie if you wanted to.
Oh yeah.
But the general idea, yeah, I do believe that as long as I think we're slowly moving into being the weakest link, might be a way of putting it. We're smart machines or whatever biological machines that really are able to do a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of us. But in the overall scheme, viewing the future a bit, it's obscured maybe. The chance, as was it Elon Musk who said it at one point, where our input output is too slow compared to a computer, and as we are more at risk from our nature, just from nature, having so little control. And I'm not saying a computer can't get a virus or whatever, quantum computer at some point as well, or whatever it might be. But as it is right now, the systems we're currently building, at some point, at some rate, somewhere, I'm unsure if someone somewhere is gonna build AI that's able to infest other AI with virus-like things, because this country is against this country, and that country has invented that thing, and we have invented the other thing, and it will be an AI thing against an AI thing. Who knows? But the general idea is that we can still succumb to something like this. I'm not saying this the coronavirus is really gonna kill us all, but who knows what will? Something, either something we make ourselves or something that nature cooks up at some point. it still means that we're maybe not the best thing to bet on as a company or a big corporation. So yeah, I'm pretty sure stuff like health tests to prove that you're not a liability. That's
right.
That's
at some point.
thing.
Yeah. And I put it up here just so people. It's a great movie. It's built created in 1997, so it's older, but it's really for the year that they made it, really foretelling like where the future was going, and how much of it is are people going to use tests to predict your future and who they should allow to do things and who not, or even to live.
And I think they have some designer babies stuff
Right.
in there as well, also and stuff.
They do, yeah. They design out flaws,
and that's most likely gonna be a thing. But yeah, I'm also watching currently the newest season of Westworld.
Oh
season
boy.
3. So right now there's 2 episodes, and they're also moving into something along those lines of us creating something that maybe is not the best for us, but might be just like the one better than us. I finally ended up seeing that to the end, which was a good series.
I really enjoyed that show.
And
Westworld, I lost interest in. It was just too wacky for me. Some of the stuff they were doing.
I liked Westworld season 1.
So did
because it had that twister at the middle there.
Yeah.
Season 2, not so much, and I'm trying with season 3 because they actually managed to do something along the end of season 2 that kind of was what we're watching, and at least here in the beginning of season 3, they've introduced what would you call it? A general not a general AI, that's not the right term, but some kind of big system that some of the big shots are alleviating, that they're using it for their benefit.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be a giant AI system that's keeping track of everything that's happening in the world, and it's kind of making predictions or strategies or stuff like that, and it helps companies hire the right people. And again, I've not gotten that far into it. They're taking it somewhere, but they've shown a few graphics in the series of what it is and talked about it vaguely, so you don't really know what it is yet. But it seems to be a giant system that's keeping track of everything everybody does, like big data, right? And from that, it's in every type of aspect of your life. If you want to have a job, you need a score of some kind of thing, and the predictions need to kind of say that you would be the right fit for that job to kind of give the company whatever they need. I'm not sure where it will end up, but I'm pretty sure that's something we'll see into the future. These very, very big data systems that we are already hearing about and knowing about, that will be taking a measurement of you and all that the system knows about you.
Mm-hmm.
And
have you seen or heard of this Omniscient?
No.
It's on Netflix. It was really, I'd say the last episode, I kind of it was I lost a little interest, but overall,
that one. Okay, it's not called Omniscient in here. So, but yeah, now I understand. That's where they have those small bugs that follow around and stuff.
Yeah,
I've seen an episode or 2, perhaps. So, I wasn't completely sold yet, but
it gets better. I mean, it's the show itself isn't that amazing, but it's the ideas and the concepts of what they're signifying this could be happening, right? Can you reduce crime by giving up your privacy and having someone always watching you, so you're not going to commit a crime because someone's always watching you? And is it worth that trade-off? These are really I that, and this is the other one, the Better Than Us. That one I really I lost.
I'd say
they were both good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say because I haven't seen all of Omniscient, Better Than Us. I think 10 episodes in, I kind of lost a bit of momentum.
Yeah.
But it still delivered before the end. I felt that it was worth the watch. Where I'm still not sure about Omniscient, but the beginning of Better Than Us is amazing, and the end of it is still fine, and they haven't closed the chance of there being a season 2 that's perhaps worth watching.
Right. I thought it was called Humans. Maybe it's called something slightly different. Does that sound familiar? Where?
No.
It's similar to kind of like Westworld. It was on the same time as Westworld, but they didn't come out with another season of it that I'm aware of. Or maybe it was 2 seasons. But what's this? But they're droids also. This is it. I liked it too. Basically, they become omnipresent, or what do you call it? An AI. They have intelligence. They're thinking. And what do you do when suddenly these things are alive? How do you treat them, and this and that? All of these I really enjoy, not necessarily the show themselves, but the whole thought process. I remember in the Better Than Us, it was one little thing, because they start off with the sex bots, right? They were talking about that. Yeah. And someone was on a show, and they're like, "Well, is sex bot really cheating on your spouse?" And it was just one of those things. Not that I have any interest in being with sex bot, but I'm like, I don't know. Is it like it raises some really interesting questions?
Yeah, I just to kind of get into that part of the moral dilemmas that technology is kind of giving us. I had once, I don't remember what it was, but a big survey on morals of self-driving cars, where I filled out a lot of questions, and a lot of people have done that around the world, and it was just images and situations where you, on a scale, kind of said, what should happen here? What's the correct thing to do? And the reason it makes sense to have so many people answer it is so you actually have an idea of what's morally correct. What do people really hear? And one of the examples was that you have a guy in his 40s driving down the street in an self-driving car, and a child who jaywalks out in front of a car. What should the car do? And then you have 3, 4, 5 options, whatever it might be, something. And whatever you choose, the car should weave and have an 80% chance of killing the driver, or the car shouldn't do anything, 100% chance of killing the child, and a few other options. And then it became kind of extreme. Like, what if it is a cat being driven by an automated car, and it's driving into a dog? What should the car do?
Yeah.
And of course, it had a lot of different scenarios: a child and an older lady in the car, and a kindergarten class on the street, and all kinds of stuff like that. And to me, it's kind of an eye opener to see how far stuff like morals really goes, because we can kind of quickly, from one situation where if people say, I was driving down the road and the cat all of a sudden jumped out and I couldn't do anything, I just hit it, and okay, it probably wasn't your fault, but if it's an automated system, where do you put it?
Right.
Is was it able to do something? Wasn't it able to do something? Where how do we determine what would have been the correct thing for the automated car to actually
Suddenly
do?
You're being forced, because you have to write a program, right? You're being
Yeah.
forced to decide ahead of time. Yeah, that's interesting. I wanted to I added this one of the, saving the economy. Saving or killing the economy versus saving or possibly killing lives. It's one right now with the whole coronavirus and the more we stay inside, globally, right? The more we stay inside, the more we know we are killing the economy, right? Yet we're saving. I think everyone agrees. Also, we're saving, especially older people. We're saving their lives, which is obviously a good thing. But at some point, if we do this for too long, because of course technology and resources save human lives too. If we don't have enough money to create the equipment that cures cancer or does all the stuff, then people die, right? So at some point we would cross that threshold of it's sad, but maybe we do have to let more people die and actually help the economy, because in the long run we're going to end up killing even more people. It's a tough decision, right? It's terrible.
I think that because I've also with my wife and then other people talked about exactly some of these things, and before it hit us, I was also kind of, I don't know what the correct term, but I can easily look at the numbers and be cynical, so to speak, where how many people are this, and in the whole, what does it really matter? And if some of these predictions that have been shown, some of the possible outcomes of at least the coronavirus, is if you don't do any kind of damming or like stopping the spread of it in this one season without any kind of measures, they're talking about a spread of 40 to 60% of the population. And at one point, the death rate was put to about 3, and now it's lower. But at least they know that about 14% of the people that gets this virus needs hospital care. They need ventilators or in some cases respirators. And 14% of 50% of the population, that's a lot of people within maybe a 4 months period. That's just, and it seems that they need, if they get so bad that they need to go into the ventilators, they seem to need it for about 3 weeks. So that's a long period to have that amount of people. Of course, we're not at those numbers, but I do understand why we're trying to kind of get lower than that. And if we at some point, and I think we are kind of seeing it, that, okay, the numbers will be lower. If we don't do anything, will they then be 10%? Okay, can we manage 10%? Do we need it to be 8% to be in the clear? Or where do we need? And I think that's why a lot of countries, my own, acted pretty quickly, not quickly enough, but pretty quickly, whereas the UK acted slower. And they were pretty stand fast, like we'll manage, we'll let it spread into the populace, and we'll get a flock immunity. And then it started spreading into the populace, and somehow, somewhere, and I don't know the numbers, they got cold feet. They were like, oh my God, no, we're not. And then within a day, they implemented 2 people gatherings and school closings and everything. So somewhere the numbers are making at least politicians or whoever it is afraid. And I do understand that losing 1% over a period, that's maybe not that hard. But if you have people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who need to be in respirators for 3 weeks, and it's 10% of the country's population who needs to be that, I understand why you can't just let that happen.
Right.
So until we understand this virus a little bit better, it's probably good to see if we can take the top off and then get data. And when we have data, then act more accordingly.
Well, and just to keep in mind, right, because I know we've already discussed this too, and I know this is why you and I, we never argue, because it's still just a matter of presenting facts and data and making a decision, right? And to just what you'll hear mostly in the press, and I don't mean this politically, like the left or the right politically, I mean both do it, right? It's like it's an all or nothing. It's a black or white, and that's never the case, right? So the example you just gave here, talking about whether it's 1% or the set, well, it's 1%, or there's 1,000 people about, but you know what? The flu kills off how many thousands of people every year. There's so many other things, and that's where it's like, look, it sucks to lose 1% of anything of the whatever, but that already happens, right? It's not, we're not saying, well, it's either that or it's nothing, because we can't get to nothing. And even then they're still dying other ways. Why would we spend trillions of dollars to do one thing and not spend some other money doing, that are probably have much better effect? Putting that resources, if you say it's really a matter of saving lives, maybe we should actually just, cure the regular flu instead of the coronavirus. Because it, on average, it I'm just saying, if it could be done and they could solve it, it's just something to consider, right? Let's take a step back before we literally crush and kill the economy. Like in the U.S., they're talking about, on top of the hundreds of billions of other dollars, the plan that just got canceled, and I think because the Democrats want to put even more money in it, it was like $1.4 trillion, and our entire budget for the year is like $4 trillion, I think, somewhere in there. So a quarter of, they're gonna actually, it was closer to almost half, if I remember. It was 1.8 trillion. They were trying to pass to add on top of everything, half of what the normal government runs on already, and we're already in so much debt, and that wasn't, quote unquote, wasn't enough. Again, I don't want to point fingers, and that's not it. It's just that, like, holy hell. I think that the thing that I gotta say, I'll say this, that Trump said the other day was, we can't have the cure worse than the disease, right? And I think that's what he was alluding to, of like, we can't kill the economy so bad that we're actually in the long run worse off. It's just, it's a terrible thing to have to make a decision on, but yeah, it's tough.
That, of course, it's a statement that just makes sense. Most people can of course relate to the cure not being worse than the disease, but I'm still sure that it's because we don't have enough data, and it's like,
fair enough. Right.
We know that what was it, the Spanish flu that killed, I don't even remember, but
huge numbers,
millions of people
yes,
in one season, and of course, if we didn't act this time around, we might have hit numbers like that, and I'm pretty sure that's what's scaring the politicians enough to act, just to not be the one who sits afterwards and has lost millions of people, because losing trillions of dollars is probably easier to defend than losing millions of people. And of course, Trump and other politicians have to act as soon as they get viable data that will show them that, oh, it isn't as bad as we feared. Let's get them our economy back. But until you have enough, and right now you have what, 2 countries, 3 countries maybe, that have hit that really exponential curve, where in Italy they're just short of 1,000 people each day dying, and from something they know, they might have died of other things, but currently that's the thing. And that number, I know in Denmark at least, here we don't say that people died from the coronavirus. We say that people died with the coronavirus, because the thing is that you actually send the test, whatever, might not come back before they die of organ failure, or their lungs filling with fluid, or whatever. That's the thing that actually killed them. But yeah, they had the coronavirus in their system, but some of the ones that have died up until now would probably have died at the same time anyway. We don't really know, but the thing is, I think, what was it, up until 60 days, I think, is the actual window. If you have a positive test within 60 days of your death, that's counted in the measuring.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we will keep seeing that, the death toll of this will be enormous without we really being sure if it was the coronavirus that killed them, or if they just had the coronavirus in their system when they died. So yeah.
All right, let's get moving on here. So, so recycling was just one of those fun, interesting ones we were talking about earlier, and it dawned on me with this whole idea of germs and being things clean and reusable. We all like the idea of reusing things, but at the same time, what's the toll, right? If we're getting that stuff back and we're handling it and people are getting sick and dying from it, maybe it's not worth saving the extra cardboard or aluminum can for temporarily, right? Maybe we should consider some of our policies on these things or take some different precautions to it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we talked about, as you said, Joe, and of course I know with can recycling and then other recycling ways here in Denmark, at least, there's probably not that many hands on. Like, so if I have handled this can here, there's probably not, when I put it into the recycling return system at the supermarket, I know that the machine actually compresses it and puts it in some kind of container that it's then picked up and shipped off to somewhere. And that's fine. Not many hands are on there. But as other diseases might emerge, or a disease like this one, we don't really know exactly what's going on. If fluid spills out of these onto whatever and onto the floor, or however it works, the chance of it actually, some people are then still handling the stuff.
Yeah, well, let's take a couple different examples. But first off, let me change it. In the States, we don't have, at least not that I'm aware of, systems like that you just described, right? I think you can take them places and dump it in bulk, but the vast majority of people throw away, or they put it out and it just gets picked up. And when I say picked up, it's picked up in a bin, so they're not touching it either. But in a lot of places in the country, you have homeless people looking through the garbage to pull them out to recycle them, right? That's where I'm like, that's not necessarily great. But I read one, and I think it was Starbucks had said they're no longer allowing people to bring in their cups. Like, you have to get a clean cup, right? Because it can have it and spread it. So that's an example that's a little closer to home, or even clothes or something, right? That you, like, when you go to buy it, maybe you should bring it home and wash it in hot water. Just some things to take into account when you buy recycled things or used.
That's interesting. I don't think that you could in Denmark be allowed to actually bring your own cup.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That would be a health, whatever. I don't know what you call it, hygiene issue. Yeah. I don't think they would be. Of course, if you had the cup and they were just pouring coffee into it, that wouldn't be a problem. But you actually handing it to someone and them bring it into the area of that would not be allowed.
Yeah.
No.
The next one here, public transportation in general, right? Of like, riding Uber, riding in an airplane, taking a cruise, all these things. I think they're going to go through some serious transformations in how they're used. Maybe they're going to come up with some sort of a way in vehicles to block the air and keep the air separate from the driver. But even then, if I'm an actual passenger, I'm more worried about the other people that was in the car before, not necessarily the driver. It's just everyone else that shared that space with me.
Yeah, and again, that's not Uber, but I know it was one of the companies that are testing this self-driving stuff, is that apparently people get more gross when there's no driver. Which is kind of a problem.
Interesting.
So they're of course trying to do different things to kind of alleviate that, so that the next person who needs to use the cab doesn't end up in a situation where whoever was there before them had a bad habit of something. Who knows? Yeah. But air. I heard someone here in the plane industry saying that doing flights was probably not the time where things through the air was that big of a problem, because apparently in most airplanes the air is recycled or changed almost 80 times more in an hour than it is just of being outside. But still, it's something that's filtered, so who says that those filters actually catch everything? But I do understand that, okay, the air inside an airplane is actually renewed pretty often, which is okay, but in public transportation, like a train or metro or whatever, it's pretty still. It's probably only cleaned once a day, or how often that happens. Yeah.
Incidentally, just because Jackie and I talked about this on the side, but we both agreed we had heard things about, hey, the coronavirus can be airborne and it can stay in the air for, what was it, up to 3 hours, I think.
Yeah.
But just because some particles, and what you phrased it, how did you phrase it, Jackie? In still air where it's not moving. You said it a certain way. So there's no down breeze or something, right? It can,
exactly.
It can levitate. It can stay in the air without any wind. But it's probably not enough to get you sick, right? It's generally speaking, the one I saw, it wasn't as nitty gritty as what Jackie is talking about, but you got to be within a few feet, of following a person that coughs, and it can stay in the air for a couple seconds, but it's going to drop to the ground. I mean, you can still touch it, again, don't touch it, but the touching is much more with this coronavirus, is touching it and then touching your eye or your mouth or your nose.
It was a question that was asked in because you might see on the news people in Asia, whatever where it is, where they're spraying the streets with different types of disinfectant, which is of course fine, but as they said back here, it's like there's not many people really touching the ground, and of course if you step it in it, but before you actually get anywhere, you would have already diluted it too many times over, so that shouldn't be. If you have a bus stop where people are in the same place, that makes sense, but in the sidewalk, not so much. And then the question about people figuring out that it in a lab environment, in still air, where the air doesn't really move, you could still detect virus particles after 3 hours. And in that type of environment, but when you're outside in the air, the virus is diluted into infinity. There's just too much there, and I used the example of when you exhale, in cold weather, you'll be able to see the droplets because the stuff that you're actually seeing, your breath, is water droplets that's freezing. So you can actually see that it's not getting that far away from you, and will drop to the ground pretty quickly from you exhaling. So the reason you're talking about coughs and sneezes is that's because that's when you can actually get that stuff to move further away. So in normal cases, 1 to 2 meters or 3 to 6 feet should keep you relatively safe, because people can't breathe virus particles that far away. So in that aspect there, it's not airborne like, what was that? Smallpox or measles or whatever. There is one of them that is actually airborne, where it's so small, it's so that it can actually float in the air. And that's not what the coronavirus is actually able to do.
Yeah, because I honestly, I was really panicked when I heard that news. I'm like, holy cow, that changes everything. And I was really glad to hear that. Like, it's not it. It's they did a bad job describing it. And then, so all of this, right? Obviously, I think again with the desktop automation, right? We're just going to see more and more people wanting to hire more efficient people and hire people who can train bots and create bots and be more productive.
Yeah, it kind of falls into here, all the working remotely and being able to still cover whatever task you had set forth, and having an automated system of some kind that's able to still get out the daily report or whatnot, having someone able to just start that small thing, or it being ready in the morning for whoever needs it. And instead of you needing to have ready hands who come at maybe 7 o'clock and need an hour to get it ready for you, it might be ready at 6. So as soon as you get at 7 o'clock, it's there. It's just
right.
So and with this, where everybody's sent home or not working or whatever, if you had a system that was automated enough, you wouldn't be hit as hard by something like this. But it all kind of flows into how important are the workforce, the people, and how much of it can be automated. And some stuff can, at our current point in time, be automated. Like, I'm still having a hard time of finding something where I would just say, nope, that can't be automated. And of course, if the task becomes large enough or complex enough, it might not be worth it to try and automate it currently. But there are so many small things that I've seen people do over the years, and people use hours and hours on it. And I recently learned that one that's been implemented at work that I've talked about a little before, where apparently maybe 3 or 4 departments and a couple of employees from each used small amounts of doing their part of the steps. Like, someone over here would need the report, tell it to someone over here that would then go out and get the raw data, give it to those over here that would then put it into a specific format that the people over here could then use to pull out the main numbers and deliver those. And it took maybe 3 days or something, just because there was small parts of waiting here and there, or whatever it was. But all in all, I think it had maybe 30 work hours between all of them. I'm just guesstimating the numbers here, right? And then they made an automated desktop automation system, because all of the steps were well defined. You need to do that, and they need to do that, and this one over here pulls out this and then they do that, and then they send it there. And now the system can do it in a night. So instead of doing it in 30 hours, it's maybe doing it in 7, because all of the waiting between each and everybody has been removed, and it doesn't need to wait for someone to complete the step before it, because it was itself. So as soon as it completed pulling back the data from one system, the next thing could happen. And just by removing those 2 days time where it's not someone working, 16 hours between the 2 work days have been removed, just because it could just continue as soon as that step had been done. To me, that makes a lot of sense, and they were happy, because currently it's a small thing that maybe kind of irritating them that they had to do, because, oh, then I need to use 3 hours on that. Right. And I don't really see the benefits of it, but someone else over there is seeing it, and, oh, I'll need to do that again next week, and next week, and, oh, I've freed up 3 hours. That's a great bot. I'm so happy that, but what about all the rest of the stuff that people are doing? Most likely some of that could also be automated.
Yeah.
Could 40 hours a week of a person's time be automated? I'm not sure. Who knows? Right. But yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, this was a lot of fun. I think I didn't record the time, but I know this has been a long one. So
yeah, sure.
Not drag on from people any longer.
It's okay.
But, fun stuff, man. All right.
Yeah.
Stay safe. Talk to you soon. Everyone else, stay safe.
Yeah. Bye.